She was the epitome of inconspicuousness. Quiet, unassuming, practically invisible as she navigated the corridors of power. That is, until a most unexpected dinner invitation from her millionaire CEO turned her meticulously ordered world completely upside down. When she confidently walked into that exclusive restaurant that Friday evening, adorned in a gown that made her look every bit the goddess, she didn't just catch his discerning eye. She unlocked a passionate love story that neither of them could have ever possibly seen coming. But what exactly happens when the woman who was perpetually blending into the background makes the bold decision to step into the spotlight and courageously dares to rewrite her own narrative? Hello, wonderful family. Welcome back to True Life Stories. If you're new here, please subscribe and leave a like. Truly means the world to us. Don't forget to share this video with your cherished friends and family members, and turn on those post notifications so you never miss an exciting new video from us. Thank you for your unwavering support. Now, sit back, relax, and prepare to be swept away as we dive into this unforgettable story. Clara Hayes was the very definition of routine, arriving at the gleaming office building precisely at 7:45 a.m. each and every morning. Not a single minute earlier, not a single minute later. Her meticulously arranged desk, nestled in a quiet corner close to the CEO's impressive glass-walled office, was always impeccably organized. A pristine stack of labeled folders, a gleaming, polished monitor, and a single, tastefully framed photograph of a breathtaking sunset. No personal family pictures, no distracting clutter, no quirky, potted plants with silly names. Much like Clara herself, her desk was practical, private, and possessed a quiet strength. She adhered to the same style of outfit every single day. Long, modest gray or navy skirts, neatly buttoned-up blouses, and sensible, low-heeled shoes. Her framed glasses perched squarely on the bridge of her nose, and her naturally curly hair was always pulled back tightly into a severe bun that never had so much as a single rebellious strand out of place. If Clara happened to wear perfume, no one ever seemed to notice it. If she smiled, it was so subtle, so fleeting, that you'd almost miss it. But she was undeniably reliable, extremely so. In fact, the company's entire administrative system ran with impressive smoothness because of her tireless efforts. She remembered birthdays that everyone else had forgotten, prepared crucial quarterly reports without ever being asked, and seemed to anticipate the CEO's complex schedule, as if she possessed some kind of uncanny sixth sense. People respected Clara in a purely professional capacity, but they never really noticed her. Not truly. While her colleagues in the bustling office gossiped endlessly in the break room, took leisurely, drawn-out lunches, or mindlessly scrolled through their social media feeds, Clara was knee-deep in complicated spreadsheets and overflowing corporate calendars. Her world was strictly defined by cold, hard logic, unwavering punctuality, and top-tier performance. She simply had absolutely no time whatsoever for the frivolous, and most certainly not for things like flirting, keeping up with fashion trends, or searching for love. As a matter of fact, no one at the company had ever seen her with a date or even engaging in flirtatious conversation with anyone. The few genuinely well-meaning coworkers who had attempted to befriend her had quickly given up, whispering behind her back, branding her as cold and boring. But Clara didn't particularly mind. She had her rewarding job and she excelled at it. In her mind, that was more than enough. At least that's what she consistently told herself. It was during the critical third week of the fiscal quarter when the unexpected crisis struck. A pivotal merger document had been mishandled. A crucial legal signature had been overlooked. A vital deadline had been tragically miscommunicated. The entire high-stakes deal, worth tens of millions of dollars, was teetering precariously on the brink of falling apart. Clara, however, didn't allow herself to panic. She bravely stayed at the office for 2 consecutive nights, grabbing only a couple of hours of restless sleep on the worn sofa in the otherwise deserted break room. Her eyes became strained and bloodshot behind her dependable glasses. Her usually immaculate bun slowly unraveled by the hour. Coffee completely replaced actual meals, but she tirelessly worked, and she somehow managed to fix everything. By the time the rest of the company blearily arrived on Monday morning, the crucial papers had been properly filed, the critical signatures had been officially confirmed, and the valuable client was happily back on board. No one knew the intricate details of how it had happened, only that Clara had somehow handled the entire situation. Ethan Cole, the notoriously discerning CEO, noticed. He wasn't particularly known for indulging in small talk. A powerful man in his late 30s, Ethan was the type of natural leader who commanded a room merely by walking into it. A sharp, perfectly tailored suit, piercing, intelligent eyes, and the undeniable weight of authority in every single word he uttered. Employees both feared him a little and admired him a lot. But, unbeknownst to most, Ethan had actually been observing Clara. Not in the casual way that most people might notice a woman. No, he had been intently watching her for months. The way she never complained, never openly asked for recognition, never faltered, even under intense pressure. In a tumultuous sea of loud ambition, she was a quiet anchor, a silent powerhouse of determination. And there was undeniably something about that which genuinely intrigued him. Clara. Ethan's deep, commanding voice echoed from the doorway of his impressive office that Monday afternoon. She turned, her hands still poised expertly on the keyboard. Yes, Mr. Cole? Step inside for a moment. Clara blinked in surprise. She couldn't even remember the last time he had spoken directly to her, let alone requested to see her alone in his private office. Her heart was suddenly ticking a little faster than usual. She stood up carefully, smoothed down her practical skirt, and cautiously followed him inside. Ethan deliberately closed the heavy door behind her. I carefully reviewed the crucial updates on the Baratech deal, he said, casually walking around to lean against the front of his expansive desk. You single-handedly saved it. I was simply doing my job, she replied, standing stiffly, trying to maintain her usual composure. No, you did far more than that. Everyone else was in a complete state of panic. You weren't. He paused thoughtfully, folding his arms across his broad chest. I genuinely appreciate what you did, Clara. You've been holding this entire place together far more than I have obviously realized. Clara's fingers clenched slightly around the plain folder she was carrying. She certainly wasn't accustomed to receiving compliments, especially not from him. Thank you, sir, she said softly, carefully choosing her words. I'd like to take you to dinner, Ethan added, his voice betraying nothing. She stared at him, clearly taken aback. What? Dinner? He repeated himself, his tone remaining completely casual. To sincerely thank you. Proper thank you. Nothing particularly formal, just a simple meal. You've certainly earned it. Clara blinked rapidly, her mind scrambling to process what she had just heard. Dinner with the CEO? That was far from being nothing formal. That was practically unheard of. I don't think She began hesitantly. It's not an order. He interrupted gently, almost smiling faintly. But I would genuinely like to get to know the woman behind the miracle worker. Just dinner. No expectations whatsoever. She swallowed hard, trying to regain her composure. All right, when? Friday night. I'll send you all the details. Before she could reply, he turned back towards his large chair and resumed his focus on his computer screen. A polite signal that the unexpected conversation was officially over. Clara left his impressive office in a daze. That evening, Clara found herself sitting on her comfortable couch, staring blankly at her modest closet, as though it somehow held all the deeply hidden secrets of the entire universe. Every single outfit was just a boring variation of the same safe theme. Conservative, plain, utterly devoid of any real style. I can't possibly wear any of these, she muttered to herself, feeling utterly overwhelmed. You're damn right you can't, a familiar voice declared confidently from the doorway. Clara turned to see her best friend, Lena, looking effortlessly stylish and exuberant in a vibrant red leather jacket. Lena was already kicking off her high heels. I heard everything, Lena said, tossing her designer bag onto the inviting couch. Dinner with your incredibly hot boss? The insanely rich, intimidatingly attractive CEO? Oh honey, there is absolutely no way you are showing up in beige polyester. Clara sighed dramatically. It's not like that at all. He simply wants to thank me for my hard work. Right? Lena said, arching a perfectly sculpted eyebrow with a knowing smirk. And I just eat kale because I genuinely like the taste. I mean it, Clara, she continued seriously. I'm not trying to be anyone else. He asked me to dinner, not to audition for The Bachelor. Lena folded her arms decisively. Clara, you've been intentionally hiding behind this protective curtain of competence for far too many years. You've got emotional walls taller than your towering filing cabinets. Don't you ever actually want someone to look at you, really look at you and see you? Clara was uncharacteristically silent. Let me help, Lena said, her voice softening with genuine concern. Not for him, for you. Let me show you the beautiful woman you've forgotten is still in there. Clara hesitated momentarily, then slowly nodded her head. Clara stood self-consciously under the harsh fluorescent light of her small bedroom, barefoot, watching as Lena enthusiastically dug through her incredibly limited wardrobe like a determined archaeologist, carefully unearthing the dusty tombs of plain, forgettable fashion. Do you even own anything that isn't beige? Lena groaned dramatically, pulling out yet another muted skirt and holding it up with distaste as though it were a piece of unfortunate roadkill. Clara, these clothes aren't just modest, they're practically in witness protection. Clara sighed deeply and sat heavily on the edge of her neatly made bed, arms crossed tightly over her chest. I told you I don't do this kind of thing. Besides, it's not even a real date. Lena stopped what she was doing and looked at her intently. No, she said softly, walking over and sitting down beside her. It's not a date yet, but that really doesn't matter. This isn't just about impressing him. This is about showing up in a way that genuinely reflects who you truly are. And who you are is definitely not a boring beige skirt and those glasses you've had since your undergrad days. Clara smiled faintly. They're functional. They're tragic, Lena countered playfully. Clara looked down at her hands, feeling unusually vulnerable. I don't even know how to be that kind of woman, Lena. The kind who effortlessly turns heads. The kind that incredibly handsome men like Ethan Cole would actually notice. Lena gently took her hand in hers. Then it's definitely time you learn, because you're not invisible, Clara. You never actually were. A heavy silence hung between them for a long moment, filled only by the distant sound of a city bus passing by outside Clara's apartment window. Then Lena stood up suddenly, her eyes gleaming with determination. Come on, get dressed. We're going shopping. They arrived at the exclusive boutique just moments before it was scheduled to close for the evening. Lena, clearly a frequent and valued customer, gave the sales clerk a knowing look. We need a sartorial miracle in satin. Clara shuffled reluctantly behind her like a reluctant accomplice in a high-stakes heist. The dresses they quickly pulled off the meticulously organized racks were bold, elegant, and unlike anything Clara had ever even considered wearing. Deep jewel tones, luxurious silky fabrics, and daring necklines that dipped just a little lower than she was typically accustomed to. She tried to protest more than once, but Lena immediately shut her down every single time. No more hiding behind turtlenecks, she insisted firmly. You're not dressing for Ethan, Clara. You're dressing for the long-buried version of you that has been buried deep beneath countless report deadlines and never-ending calendar alerts. It was the fourth dress that finally did it. An absolutely stunning emerald green gown, elegantly off the shoulder, perfectly fitted at the waist, and flowing effortlessly to the floor. When Clara hesitantly stepped out of the dressing room, Lena audibly gasped. Oh my God. Clara stood frozen in front of the full-length mirror, utterly stunned. Her reflection was almost completely unrecognizable, and yet somehow incredibly familiar, like a long-lost part of herself she had simply misplaced and forgotten to actively look for. The luxurious fabric hugged her curves in all the right places. Her entire posture had subtly changed. Her shoulders were now back, her chin lifted with newfound confidence. She even smiled. Not the polite, professional curve of lips she habitually wore at work, but a genuine, radiant smile. Curious. Alive. Who is that? She whispered in disbelief. That, Lena said softly, her eyes sparkling with pride, is the woman I've always seen. They spent the entire next day meticulously planning every single detail. Lena took Clara to her favorite salon, where two talented stylists attacked her hair like it was a vital mission from God. Her hair, which was usually yanked back so tightly into a severe bun, was transformed into soft, voluminous curls that perfectly framed her delicate face. Then came the subtle, classy makeup. Clara stared at her own reflection, blinking slowly in utter disbelief. Her dependable glasses were now completely gone, replaced by comfortable contact lenses that made her dark eyes positively pop. Lena stood proudly behind her, arms folded, admiring their hard work. "Clara Hayes," she said dramatically. "You look like an absolute goddess." Clara shook her head in stunned disbelief. "I don't even recognize myself." "That's entirely the point," Lena said with a knowing smile. "You've been living your life like a shadow for far too long. It's about time you stepped fully into your own light." By Friday evening, Clara was nervously pacing back and forth in her small living room. The beautiful green gown was draped precariously over her, making her feel like it somehow belonged to someone else entirely. Her heart was rapidly thumping in her chest like a frantic warning drum. What if this was all a terrible mistake? What if Ethan laughed at her? What if she tripped and fell in her unfamiliar high heels? Her phone buzzed, breaking her out of her spiraling thoughts. It was a message from Lena. "You're not going to fade into the background tonight, Clara. You're going to shine. Go knock him dead." She took a deep, steadying breath, grabbed her chic coat, and tentatively headed for the door. The elegant restaurant was nestled discreetly in the very heart of the bustling city. A sleek, 5-star space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a glowing chandelier that looked like falling stardust. Clara stepped gingerly out of the taxi, her heart pounding in her chest, her hands nervously clenched tightly around her small clutch. As she walked tentatively through the doors, the hostess glanced up, then did a visible double-take, clearly surprised by her stunning appearance. "Name?" she asked, still slightly flustered. "Clara Hayes. Mr. Cole is already seated," the hostess said, her voice slightly breathless. "Right this way, Miss Hayes." The moment she bravely stepped into the softly lit dining room, everything seemed to slow down. The gentle clinking of glasses, the soft murmur of expensive conversations, the subtle sound of silverware against fine porcelain. It all seemed to fade into the background the instant she saw him. Ethan Cole sat at a private table near the expansive windows, staring intently down at his phone. He was dressed sharply in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, as confidently unreadable as always, until he looked up suddenly and saw her. His phone slipped slightly in his hand, betraying his surprise. For a long moment, he simply stared in stunned silence. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Clara froze in place, suddenly overwhelmed by anxiety. Every fear she had desperately tried to suppress surged back to the surface. He doesn't even recognize me. This was a terrible mistake. Then, Ethan slowly stood up and his entire expression subtly changed. The cool professionalism he always projected gave way to something far more vulnerable and genuine. His eyes carefully scanned her from head to toe, slowly, almost reverently, like he was finally seeing color for the very first time. "Clara?" he said softly, his voice low and filled with disbelief. She smiled shyly, but steadily. "I hope I'm not late." He didn't answer immediately, still visibly stunned into stunned silence as he continued to study her. "No," he said finally, pulling out her chair. "You're right on time." Clara sat down carefully, her heartbeat gradually slowing. She had actually done it. She had bravely walked through the fear, through the self-doubt, through the many years of invisibility. And now, here she was, dressed in a stunning gown, caught firmly in his intense gaze, truly seen for the first time. And for the first time in a long, long while, she felt genuinely seen. Clara had never once seen Ethan Cole hesitate. Not in packed boardrooms, not on high-stakes investor calls, not even during a company-wide crisis. He was undeniably the kind of powerful man who moved effortlessly through life like a perfectly planned storm. Precise, untouchable, utterly composed. But now, standing hesitantly beside her at the table, Ethan actually looked disarmed. He hadn't spoken again since pulling out her chair. His gaze lingered, but not inappropriately, more like he was carefully trying to reconcile the practical Clara he thought he knew with the beautiful woman now sitting before him. She could see it in the way his eyes subtly flickered to her soft hair, her sparkling eyes, the elegant curve of her lips, like he was quietly recalculating everything he previously thought he understood about her. Clara carefully folded her hands in her lap, trying desperately to calm the subtle tremble in her fingers. Her heart still pounded a steady rhythm in her chest, but she fought to keep her expression neutral. That was something that years spent navigating the cutthroat corporate environment had taught her, how to effortlessly wear calm like a protective mask. But tonight, that dependable mask had visibly cracked, and Ethan had clearly seen the real woman beneath it. He finally sat down across from her, cleared his throat softly, and offered a slight, disarming smile. "I have to admit, I certainly didn't expect this." She tilted her head slightly. "This?" He gestured with a subtle sweep of his hand. "Do you like this?" Clara's brows lifted just a touch in amusement. "If I had known it would shock you quite this much, I would have definitely warned you in advance." Ethan chuckled softly, and for the first time since she had arrived, the undeniable tension between them broke. Not vanished completely, but definitely shifted noticeably. Warmer now, definitely more curious. "I'm not complaining in the slightest," he added with a genuine smile. "I'm simply incredibly impressed." Clara looked down at the elegant menu, pretending to study it intently, but really she was just giving herself a second to breathe and regain her composure. She could subtly feel the way the other patrons glanced discreetly their way, the elegant couple in the far corner, the sommelier pausing slightly as he expertly passed their table. She really didn't blame them. It wasn't just Ethan's imposing presence, or the luxurious restaurant, or even her stunning gown. It was undeniably the way the air between them crackled with something unexpected, something almost electric. They ordered steak for him and sea bass for her, and the intriguing conversation slowly eased into motion. At first, it was all surface level. Harmless small talk about their favorite cuisines, the city's unpredictable weather, a few funny stories from the office. But Clara quickly noticed something significant. Ethan was actively listening, not just nodding politely, but really listening to her. When she spoke, his eyes stayed intently on hers. He asked thoughtful questions. He actually remembered tiny details from months ago, even trivial things she had only mentioned in passing, like the fact that she drank her coffee black and couldn't stand the irritating sound of styrofoam squeaking. He wasn't just her CEO tonight. He was a genuinely interested man who was sincerely curious about who she was as a person. So, Ethan said softly after the plates had been cleared and the expensive wine had finally arrived. Tell me something about yourself that has absolutely nothing to do with work. Clara blinked in surprise. Nothing to do with work? That's the rule? He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows casually on the table, that familiar smirk tugging playfully at the edge of his mouth. You're a bit of an enigma, Clara, and I want to solve the puzzle. She smiled. A real one, warm and completely unexpected. Well, she began hesitantly, swirling her wine slowly in the glass. I used to want to be a writer. Ethan's eyebrows rose in surprise. Really? She nodded, a hint of nostalgia in her dark eyes. Before college, before the corporate world completely consumed me, I used to spend hours writing stories. I absolutely loved creating compelling characters, building entire lives on paper. I even started writing a novel once. I actually got to chapter 12 before I abruptly stopped. Why did you stop? He asked, his voice laced with genuine curiosity. She hesitated, suddenly feeling vulnerable. Life got practical and people kept telling me it wasn't realistic, that it simply wasn't responsible. Ethan was unusually quiet for a long moment. That's a real shame, he said softly, because I genuinely think the world could certainly use a few more women like you telling stories. Her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't entirely sure what to say to that. Ethan leaned back in his chair, watching her intently with an expression that made her feel even more exposed than the revealing dress ever could. You know, I always saw you as this unshakable force, efficient, quiet, untouchable, but I never even imagined that the person behind it all was this. This? She teased playfully, arching an elegant eyebrow. Smart, funny, passionate. He paused thoughtfully, his voice softening even further. And beautiful. Clara felt her cheeks flush with unexpected heat. She looked away quickly, down at the tablecloth, suddenly very aware of the blood rushing to her skin. I don't usually do things like this, she murmured softly. Me neither. She glanced back up, unable to resist. He was smiling gently, but there was something serious in his eyes, something that told her he wasn't just saying that to be polite. They lingered long after dinner was over, slowly sipping wine under the soft, golden lights of the intimate restaurant. The air outside the expansive windows had turned dark and dreamy, and the sprawling city twinkled like a velvet sky lit with countless stars. Finally, Ethan stood up and offered her his hand. May I walk you out? Clara nodded shyly, slipping her fingers into his, surprised at how natural and comfortable it felt. They stepped out into the cool night air. The gentle breeze playfully caught a strand of her soft hair and lifted it across her cheek. Ethan reached out instinctively and tucked it gently behind her ear. His touch was incredibly brief and respectful, but it undeniably lingered on her skin long after he pulled his hand away. You really do look like a goddess, he said quietly, his eyes locking with hers. Clara let out a small, nervous laugh, half embarrassed and half stunned by his unexpected words. Well, you can certainly thank Lena for that. Your friend. She orchestrated this entire transformation. Ethan nodded in acknowledgement. Then tell her she's brilliant. But I strongly suspect that she didn't actually create this version of you, Clara. She just finally helped you to reveal it. That potent silence returned once again, thick, charged, and filled with unspoken words that neither of them quite knew how to express just yet. They reached her car. She turned to unlock it, then paused, standing with her back against the door, facing him. This was unexpected, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan took a small step closer, closing the space between them. The best things in life usually are. The nearby street light cast a soft glow on his handsome face. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, their eyes conveying more than words ever could. Neither moved, neither spoke. Then, slowly, gently, Ethan lifted her delicate hand and brought it reverently to his lips. He didn't actually kiss it, not quite. He just held it there close enough for her to feel his warm breath against her sensitive skin. Good night, Clara. She nodded, barely able to breathe. Good night. He turned and slowly walked away, his striking silhouette fading into the distant lights of the bustling city. Clara stood there for a long time after he was gone, her hand still tingling pleasantly where he had touched it, her heart no longer pounding anxiously, but floating effortlessly on air, because in just one magical evening, something significant had undeniably shifted, and she knew that nothing would ever truly be the same again. Clara arrived at work on Monday morning dressed in her usual uniform, a sensible navy blue blouse, a modest gray skirt, her familiar glasses back in place, and her hair pulled neatly into its signature bun. She moved with her trademark calm precision, a cup of strong coffee in one hand and her ever-present phone in the other. But despite her predictable appearance, everything felt different. She felt different. The elevator ride up to the 34th floor was quiet, but her thoughts were anything but. The entire weekend had passed by in a complete blur. Friday night replayed vividly in her mind like a beautiful dream she desperately didn't want to ever wake up from. The soft restaurant lights, the undeniable warmth in Ethan's deep voice, the way he had looked intently at her, not just at her appearance, but at her, like she was something rare and precious, someone truly seen and valued. She wasn't naive. She certainly knew how these types of stories typically went. Powerful bosses didn't generally fall in love with their quiet secretaries in real life, and most certainly not CEOs who could easily date glamorous models and wealthy socialites. But this wasn't just some shallow fantasy. She had actually been there, and Ethan hadn't treated her like a novelty or a charity case. He had sincerely listened, laughed freely, and watched her like she actually mattered. Clara stepped into her small office and found a small, elegant envelope waiting on her desk. No company logo, no sender name, just her initials, handwritten in simple black ink. Her heart skipped a beat. She opened it carefully, her hand remarkably steady despite the rising anticipation. Inside was a short, but incredibly impactful note. Clara, thank you for Friday night. You surprised me in all the best ways. Would you allow me to return the favor this time, without the pretense of work? Dinner. Friday. Just us. E. She stared at the note for a full minute, her mind racing. Not a business dinner, not a thank you dinner, but a real date. Her throat tightened slightly. It felt like a door had suddenly opened in front of her, one she had never even considered knocking on, and a small part of her desperately wanted to run. "You're not seriously thinking of saying no, are you?" Lena asked that night, her voice muffled slightly as she applied a face mask and spoke into her phone. "I honestly don't know what I'm doing," Clara admitted, feeling utterly lost. "This is Ethan Cole, Lena, CEO, billionaire. He simply doesn't date people like me. He literally just asked you out, Clara. That seems like a pretty clear contradiction. But what if this is just some weird phase? What if he's just caught up in the novelty of seeing me dressed up for once?" Lena peeled off the face mask with a dramatic sigh. "Clara, he doesn't want you because of the dress. That's just what helped him finally notice what the rest of us have been seeing all along. He's drawn to you, Clara, the one who saved his company's biggest deal. The brilliant woman who writes entire novels in her head but never actually shares them with anyone." Clara was uncharacteristically quiet, absorbing her best friend's heartfelt words. Lena's voice softened with genuine concern. "You're scared, Clara. I completely get that. But please, don't let fear keep you from experiencing something truly beautiful." The week passed slowly, each day feeling like an eternity. Ethan didn't push her for an answer. He sent no follow-up emails, no suggestive texts, no awkward encounters at the office copier. Just that single, impactful note. He gave her space to process it all. And somehow, that small gesture made her want to say yes even more. By Thursday evening, Clara had finally made up her mind. On Friday morning, she left a reply on Ethan's otherwise empty desk before he arrived at the office. It simply read, "I'll be there. See you Friday." That evening, Ethan picked her up himself. No driver, no fancy limo, just his sleek black car and that same composed, slightly amused expression she remembered so well from the office. Only tonight, it was notably softer, warmer, and more inviting. Clara wore a deep burgundy dress this time, less dramatic than the emerald green gown from their first encounter, but undeniably elegant and understated. Her hair was down again, but looser, more relaxed. She hadn't gone for full glamour this time. She genuinely wanted to show him who she truly was, without all the carefully crafted artifice. When he saw her, Ethan smiled warmly in a way that made her stomach flutter with nervous excitement. "You look beautiful," he said simply, his eyes conveying genuine admiration. She smiled back shyly. "So do you," he chuckled softly. "You've never actually complimented me before, Clara. You've never made it particularly easy," she countered playfully. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the bright city lights blurring past the windows. "Where are we going?" she finally asked, her curiosity piqued. Ethan glanced at her warmly. "Somewhere quieter this time, somewhere we can actually talk." The secluded rooftop garden was tucked away on top of an old, historic hotel, a hidden gem that very few people even knew about. It had soft, romantic lighting, twinkling string lights draped artfully over rustic wooden beams, and a small, intimate terrace set with just a few private tables. They were the only ones there. Ethan had rented the entire space out for the evening. Clara blinked in delighted surprise as she stepped cautiously onto the. They dined al fresco on the terrace. "You went to all this trouble just for dinner?" Clara asked, genuinely touched. Ethan simply shrugged, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I thought you deserved a break. A respite from those stuffy rooms and even stiffer suits." She gazed up at the skyline, the stars barely visible, veiled by the urban haze. It was tranquil, a world removed from their hectic, commonplace existence. "You really didn't have to do all this?" she murmured, her voice laced with gratitude. He held the door open for her, his eyes meeting hers with a warmth that sent a shiver down her spine. "I wanted to. For years you've moved through life, unnoticed, unappreciated. It's high time someone properly saw you." Clara's chest constricted. No man had ever addressed her in such a manner, as if she were a person of worth, someone truly deserving of attention. Dinner was deliberately casual. They perused a concise menu offering delectable choices. They settled on grilled salmon, a creamy herb risotto, and a bottle of red wine that Ethan jokingly admitted he only pretended to comprehend. They conversed effortlessly, sharing anecdotes about their childhoods, discussing favorite books, lamenting the solitary nature of leadership, and revealing hidden dreams and deep-seated fears. All the topics that never made it into terse office emails. Clara even confided in him about her perpetually unfinished novel, a story centered on a woman who existed in the background of her own life until the epiphany that she was, in fact, the protagonist. Ethan listened intently, leaning in as if every word was precious. When she finished, he said, "That sounds remarkably like someone I know." Surprised, she raised her eyebrows. "You think I'm the main character now?" He reached across the table, his thumb gently caressing her knuckles. "I think you always were, Clara. You just needed to realize it." Later, they stood at the edge of the rooftop, overlooking the glittering expanse of the city below. A gentle breeze picked up, teasing strands of Clara's hair across her cheek. Ethan subtly positioned himself behind her, close enough to feel his presence, yet respectful of her personal space. "I honestly didn't expect this," Clara confessed softly. "Neither did I," Ethan replied, his voice a low murmur. A comfortable silence settled between them, pregnant with unspoken possibilities. The moment stretched, filled with anticipation. Then, Clara turned to face him, her heart pounding, but not with apprehension. Instead, with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice honest and vulnerable. He reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "So am I." She gazed up into his eyes, those sharp, intelligent eyes that had once intimidated her. Now, they were brimming with something altogether different: tenderness, sincerity, a raw and disarming honesty. And then, slowly, deliberately, Ethan leaned in. Clara's breath hitched in her throat. Their lips met. The kiss wasn't rushed, nor dramatic, but rather slow, careful, and deeply meaningful. It was as if two souls were rediscovering a language they instinctively knew how to speak. The kiss deepened, and for a fleeting moment, everything else faded away. The dazzling city lights, the relentless expectations, the antiquated version of herself she'd clung to for so long. She had never been kissed like this before. Not like she truly mattered. Not like she was someone worth waiting an eternity for. When they finally broke apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers, his voice barely audible. I've wanted to do that since the moment you walked into that restaurant and utterly captivated me. Clara smiled, her eyes still closed, savoring the lingering sensation of his lips on hers. I've wanted you too. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she felt something inside her blossom, something long dormant. A door she had locked and forgotten about creaked open. Her heart, finally unlocked. Monday morning arrived with a vengeance, a stark contrast to the dreamlike weekend. The memory of the rooftop kiss still lingered in Clara's mind. The tender pressure of Ethan's lips, the heartfelt honesty in his voice, the uncharacteristic lightness of her heart. But that ethereal feeling didn't last. The instant she stepped into the office building, she sensed it. A palpable shift in the atmosphere, subtle yet sharp, and undeniably present. People were staring, whispers slithered through the hallways like furtive shadows, accompanied by sideways glances, forced half-smiles, and the occasional snicker. Conversations abruptly ceased as she approached, only to resume the second she was out of earshot. Clara didn't need to ask for an explanation. She instinctively knew. Somehow, someone had discovered the truth about her and Ethan. By mid-morning, she witnessed the drama unfold in real time. Ethan emerged from the elevator, as tall and self-assured as always. But when he walked past a pair of junior managers, they exchanged knowing glances, smirking in Clara's direction. She felt her stomach churn. It wasn't the judgment itself that stung. It was the insidious assumption behind it, that she had suddenly morphed into that woman, the secretary who slept her way to the top, the quiet, unassuming girl who had blossomed solely to climb the corporate ladder. They didn't know the truth about what she and Ethan shared. They were oblivious to the countless late nights, the sacrifices she'd made, the unwavering honesty that had formed the bedrock of their connection. And frankly, they didn't care. Clara had been virtually invisible for years. Now, she was the object of everyone's attention, but not for the reasons she had ever hoped. At lunch, she sat alone in the break room, listlessly poking at her salad, her appetite gone. The phone rang. It was Lena calling right on schedule. I heard it's already made the rounds, she announced, bypassing the usual pleasantries. Your office gossip train moves faster than the company newsletter. Clara sighed wearily. What are they saying? Clara hesitated, reluctant to give voice to the rumors that had been swirling around her all morning. That I orchestrated that dinner as a calculated move to get close to him. That I'm shamelessly using him. Lena paused for a beat, her silence speaking volumes. And how's Ethan handling it? I don't know. We haven't spoken since Friday night. I think he's trying to give me some space. Are you okay? Clara sighed heavily. I should be, but this was never supposed to happen. I'm not this person. I never craved attention. I just wanted to be respected for my work. And you are. Lena responded firmly, her voice laced with conviction. But sometimes people only respect what they can easily define. They can't pigeonhole you anymore, so they resort to misunderstanding you instead. Lena's words resonated with Clara more profoundly than she anticipated. That evening, Clara lingered late at the office to avoid the judgmental stares and hushed conversations. The office was dimly lit and mostly deserted, save for the quiet hum of the machines and the occasional echo of footsteps. She didn't hear Ethan approach, but she sensed his presence at the periphery of her awareness. Hey, he said softly, standing at the entrance of her cubicle. She turned, offering a strained smile. Hi, can we talk? He nodded. They retreated to his office. For the first time it felt awkward, even forbidden, to be alone with him there. The same glass walls, the same breathtaking city skyline, but the atmosphere was palpably different, heavy with unspoken concerns. I know it's been going around, Ethan stated, closing the door behind him, his expression serious. And I'm incredibly sorry, Clara. This is, in a way, my fault. No, Clara interjected quickly. It's not. Yes, it is, he countered, his voice low and measured. I am your boss. The inherent power imbalance is undeniable. No matter how genuine this feels between us, people will inevitably twist it. She fixed her gaze on him, her mind racing. So what do we do about it? Ethan perched on the edge of his desk, his arms crossed. I've already consulted with HR. If these rumors persist, I'm prepared to address them formally. Clara swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. You'd be willing to make our relationship public? He nodded resolutely. If that's what it takes to protect you. She hesitated, the weight of his words sinking in. But what if I don't want to be in the spotlight? What if I want to remain out of sight? Ethan met her eyes, his gaze unwavering. Then I'll step back, Clara. This only moves forward if you want it to. And there it was, the invisible line she hadn't anticipated him drawing. Not a demand, not a preordained solution, but a choice. Entirely hers. That night, as Clara sat in her apartment staring at the twinkling city lights, her phone buzzed, announcing the arrival of an email. The subject line caught her eye. Administrative director position opening. It was from a rival firm, a company she had long admired, one renowned for its creative freedom, its superior compensation packages, and most importantly, the promise of a fresh start. The message was personalized, expressing the recruiter's admiration for her work and extending an invitation to meet. The opportunity was undeniably enticing. The timing was almost too perfect, bordering on uncanny. Clara stared at the screen for an extended period, her mind swirling with conflicting emotions. This was her chance to escape the persistent whispers and judgmental gazes. To begin anew, somewhere where she wouldn't be viewed as merely the secretary who turned heads, but rather as the talented professional with a proven track record. But what about Ethan? She relayed the news to him the following day. They convened at a quiet cafe near the river, far removed from the oppressive atmosphere of the office and the ceaseless rumors. I received an offer, she confessed, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. Ethan regarded her, his expression unreadable. Big company, she continued, filling the silence. Better title. It's essentially everything I've been working towards. And you deserve it, he said after a pregnant pause, his voice filled with genuine conviction. But if I accept, she trailed off, her voice barely a whisper. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. We won't see each other every day. Exactly. A heavy silence enveloped them. "I don't want you to leave, Clara," Ethan said finally, breaking the tension. "But I would hate to be the reason you stay if it means sacrificing your own ambitions." Clara looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "I'm genuinely unsure of what to choose." "Then don't decide just yet," he responded gently, reaching for her hand across the table. "Take the weekend. Breathe. Ask yourself what you truly want. Not what they expect from you. Not what I want. What you want." She blinked, processing his words. "You'd be okay with me leaving?" "No," he admitted readily, his honesty disarming. "But I'd be immensely proud of you, regardless of your decision." The weekend arrived cloaked in rain. Clara remained indoors, cocooned in a soft blanket, surrounded by half-filled notebooks and tattered drafts of the novel she had never quite managed to complete. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she wasn't simply evaluating her job. She was evaluating her entire life. When had she started shrinking herself to fit the limited boxes others had constructed around her? When had the pursuit of her own ambitions begun to feel like a selfish endeavor? She thought about the woman in the emerald dress, the one who had walked into that restaurant and captivated the entire room with her quiet confidence, the one who had rendered a man like Ethan Cole speechless mid-sentence. That woman wasn't a stranger. She was, in essence, her. Clara simply had to decide what kind of life she wanted that woman to lead. By Monday morning, she had arrived at a decision. She arrived at work early. Her final report had been meticulously printed. Her desk had been cleared of personal belongings. Her resignation letter had been carefully typed, signed, and sealed. Ethan was already waiting in his office when she knocked softly on the door. She stepped inside, her demeanor calm and composed. "I'm leaving," she announced, her voice steady. He nodded once slowly, his expression betraying nothing. "Is it the other company?" he inquired. "No," she replied, meeting his gaze. "I'm leaving because I've spent far too long contributing to someone else's empire while neglecting to build my own. I'm going to finish my novel. I'm going to finally write the stories that I've been too afraid to tell. I want to embrace a life that doesn't confine me behind a desk, hidden from the world." She handed him the letter. Ethan looked at her, not with disappointment, but with something akin to pride. "You're incredible, Clara," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You always have been." She smiled, a hint of sadness touching her lips. "We may not work together anymore." He stood, walked around the desk, and took her hand in his. "No," he said, his gaze sincere. "But this doesn't have to be the end unless you want it to be." She searched his eyes, seeking reassurance. "And if it does end here, I'll still be eternally grateful," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "For the woman who walked into my life like a quiet storm and irrevocably changed everything." Clara stepped forward and kissed him. A lingering, tender kiss, a promise of what could be rather than a final goodbye. "I'm choosing me," she said, her voice filled with newfound determination. "And that, Clara," Ethan replied, his smile radiating genuine joy, "is precisely why I fell in love with you in the first place." 1 year had elapsed since Clara Hayes had submitted her resignation letter. 12 months since she had walked away from the 34th floor office tower, leaving behind the sterile glass walls, the neatly stacked reports, and the limiting label of just a secretary. 12 months since she had kissed Ethan Cole in his office and chosen herself, not as an act of defiant rebellion, but as an act of profound rebirth. Now, she stood in the back room of a quaint bookstore in Brooklyn, nervously adjusting the sleeves of her cream silk blouse. The soft murmur of conversation filtered in from the shop's front, where rows of chairs had been carefully arranged and copies of her book, The Woman in the Windowless Office, were stacked high on the tables. She exhaled slowly, placing a hand over her heart. It was all real. She had actually done it. Clara Hayes was a published author. The novel was a work of fiction, but every reader could sense the truth bleeding through its pages. The quiet yearning, the invisible battles, the fierce journey of self-discovery undertaken by a woman who had, for far too long, settled for existing in the background. Her book launch event had attracted a surprisingly large crowd of former co-workers, editors, literary agents, avid readers, and cherished friends, including the one who had never truly left her side, Ethan. She hadn't expected him to attend, at least not initially. They had stayed in touch, cautiously at first, meeting for dinners when their schedules permitted, engaging in phone calls and texts, sharing stolen moments of laughter amidst long stretches of solitude. He had never exerted pressure, never made demands, but he had always been present, a constant source of quiet support. And when Clara had finally announced that her manuscript was complete, he was the first to eagerly request a copy. As the event commenced, Clara stepped onto the small, makeshift stage. A wave of enthusiastic applause greeted her, and she offered a genuine smile, her demeanor no longer nervous or timid, but rather grounded and self-assured. "I used to sit behind a desk and meticulously organize the lives of the individuals who were building empires," she began, her voice clear and warm, resonating with the audience. "And I genuinely believed that was enough, that being useful was synonymous with being seen." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "But I came to realize something profound, that you can be efficient, professional, and unfailingly polite, and still remain utterly invisible. That it's entirely possible to be respected, but not truly known." She scanned the crowd, her gaze finally settling on Ethan, who was leaning against the back wall in a tailored navy jacket, his expression radiating pride. "And then," she continued, her voice softening with emotion, "one day, someone actually looks at you, not merely through you, and suddenly you're reminded of everything you could be if you just allow yourself to try." The room was hushed, the audience captivated by her words, feeling the raw honesty and vulnerability that permeated the air. "I didn't write this book because I possessed all the answers," she confessed. "I wrote it because I desperately needed to find them. And if there's one thing I want every woman in this room to remember, it's this: don't wait for permission to be seen. Don't wait for the world to finally notice you. Step into your own light and claim your rightful place in the narrative." A thunderous applause erupted, shaking the room. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment. Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she didn't allow herself to cry. Not this time. She was no longer the woman who was afraid of attracting attention. The book signing commenced shortly after. Readers approached her one by one, clutching their copies as if they were precious artifacts, sharing personal stories about how they saw reflections of themselves in her characters, how they felt understood and validated for the first time in their lives. Clara listened attentively, offered words of encouragement, and inscribed each book with a simple message. To the main character in your own story, Clara H. Toward the end of the line, a young woman approached, her demeanor timid and uncertain. She wore oversized glasses and a plain cardigan, her voice barely audible. She clutched the book to her chest as if it might slip away at any moment. I just wanted to say thank you, the girl stammered, her voice trembling slightly. I work as a receptionist at a law firm, and I've always been the quiet one, the one that no one really talks to. But your book made me feel like I'm not nothing. Clara smiled warmly, reaching across the table to gently touch the girl's hand. You're not nothing, she said softly, her gaze filled with compassion. You're just waiting for the right moment to reveal everything that you are. The girl wiped her eyes, nodded gratefully, and walked away. Clara blinked back her own tears, her heart swelling with empathy. As the event wound down and the last of the guests slowly filtered out, Clara stepped outside the bookstore to catch her breath, needing a moment of solitude. The city was bathed in a soft golden light, and a gentle breeze danced through her hair. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, savoring the moment. You always were a scene stealer, a familiar voice said from behind her. She turned to find Ethan standing just a few feet away, holding a small velvet box in his hand. Her heart fluttered in her chest. I wasn't expecting a gift, she said with a teasing smile, attempting to mask her nervousness. He stepped closer, his eyes locking with hers. This isn't a gift, Clara. It's a question. He opened the box, revealing a ring. Simple, elegant. A single shimmering stone that sparkled beneath the streetlight. Not flashy, not ostentatious, but perfectly, undeniably right. I fell in love with you the moment you walked into that restaurant looking like a goddess, he said, his voice filled with emotion. But I remained in love with you because of the woman you were long before that. The one who held everything together, who silently shouldered everyone's burdens, and who never asked for anything in return. Clara, you don't need saving. You never did. But I would be eternally honored to stand beside you while you save the world. One story at a time. He knelt down on one knee. Will you marry me? She covered her mouth with her hand, the tears finally spilling over, but not tears of sorrow or regret, but tears of pure, unadulterated joy. Then, laughing softly, she reached for him and whispered, yes. Ethan stood and kissed her, and in that moment, the bustling street around them faded into oblivion. There was no office, no whispers, no judgment, no painful past. Only the two of them, standing at the edge of something truly beautiful, embarking on a new chapter together. Clara's second book was released a year later. It was titled The View from Her Own Window. It debuted on the bestseller list and was optioned for a limited television series even before the first printing had sold out. Critics lauded its depth, its raw humanity, its unique and compelling voice. But Clara didn't care about the accolades as much as she cared about the letters. Hundreds of them, pouring in from women from all walks of life, personal assistants, cashiers, single mothers, graduate students, all conveying the same sentiment. You reminded me that I matter. She carefully preserved every single letter in a cherished box at the foot of her writing desk, a testament to the impact her words had had on the lives of others. One afternoon, she sat in a bookstore cafe, sipping coffee and signing copies of her book, when a young woman approached her hesitantly. She wore glasses that were slightly too large for her face, a cardigan that was a bit too tight, and her eyes were wide with uncertainty. I haven't quite figured out who I am yet, the girl admitted shyly. I feel like I'm just watching life unfold from the sidelines. Clara smiled, a knowing glint in her eyes. Do you write? She asked gently. The girl nodded, a flicker of hope in her gaze. But no one ever reads it. I've never shown it to anyone. Clara opened her copy of the book, inscribed it with a personal message, and handed it to the girl. Promise me one thing, she said, her voice filled with warmth. What? The girl asked, her curiosity piqued. Don't wait for someone else to see you, Clara responded, her gaze unwavering. Start by seeing yourself. That's where the story truly begins. The girl blinked, processing her words, then smiled, a small, shy, but undeniably genuine smile. Clara watched her go, her heart full. She had once been invisible, but now she was a voice, a beacon of hope and inspiration for countless others. A woman who had courageously stepped out of the shadows and into the brilliant light. And she vowed to never, ever go back. We have reached the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.